A few of you have been wanting me to talk about Bryan Singer and these new allegations that have come up about him. And I'm like, okay, what can we say about Bryan Singer that hasn't already been discovered and or said already? And then it dawned on me. Bryan Singer was the director for the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, which is the movie about the rock band Queen, but I think it focused almost more so on the Freddie Mercury member of the band, which was the lead singer of the band. And of course, he died from AIDS back in, I want to say, either the 80s or 90s, somewhere around that time, because he was a gay man. And I said, now I know why all this stuff is starting to pop up back up about Bryan Singer. And then it made me realize and think of somebody else, and that was Nate Parker. Now, when Nate Parker was promoting heavily his movie Birth of a Nation back in 2016, and he was getting all this praise, this rape charge or whatever came up about him. Now, he already had went to court. Sorry about that. I missed and paused the button by mistake. But back to Nate Parker. They went through the court proceedings. He had the trial. He was found not guilty. And then years later, this pops back up with him right before his movie is set to come out, like almost 2 months before the movie is set to drop. And they got scared because of the content of the movie, because they said it was a contender for a lot of awards. And I think he probably would have racked up like that. A lot of people were saying this is going to be his year. And they didn't like that, especially because it was about a slave rebellion and not in the sense of the slave, being treated as the slave, like 12 years a slave and all the other slave narratives before it. And then, he pretty much got shut out. And I actually saw an article where it said he's working on a comeback. So if that is true, good for him. But back to Bryan Singer. I think they're bringing this stuff into the forefront because the movie Bohemian Rhapsody has been winning a lot of awards lately. As some of you may know, they're in the middle of award season. That's basically when it's a bunch of awards that are going on all at one time. Like they just had the Golden Globes. They had something called the Critics' Choice Awards. They just released the Oscar nominations. The SAG Awards is coming up. Then the Grammy Awards will be coming up the week after the Super Bowl. And then the Oscars usually rounds out award season. That's going to be at the end of February. And the movie itself has been nominated for a lot of different awards in various categories. His name pops up, but if you notice, Bryan Singer was never ever present at any of those award shows. And there's a reason for that. That's because they know of his sordid past. And I think 2 weeks before the movie wrapped, he was fired. It was either 2 weeks before the movie was done filming or 2 weeks after the movie started filming. It was one of those two. But I think it was 2 weeks after, 2 weeks before the movie was done filming. And I think he got fired and someone else stepped in. And you never see Bryan Singer at any of the award shows, the red carpets. As a matter of fact, when the movie, when it does win various awards, you'll notice that none of the people who worked on the film even thank Bryan Singer as a director. He didn't and also too, I don't think the movie was in any directorial categories as far as best director, this, that, and the third, because of his reputation. Now it's funny because in going back to Nate Parker, when he was going through his stuff and he got ran through the mud, he pretty much got shut out altogether. His movie didn't even get any type of nominations, but Bryan Singer's movie did. But it's also the reason why the movie got so much praise, which is why a lot of the stuff is coming up about Bryan Singer now. So what I'm going to do is read this article coming from BBC News. It says, Bryan Singer, Bohemian Rhapsody director, reportedly facing sex allegations. Now here I am thinking that this is something old, because we've been hearing about Bryan Singer for years. And all of the sexual, I guess you could say, escapades he's been involved with boys who were underage, under the age of 18. It says Bohemian Rhapsody director Bryan Singer has reportedly been accused of sexually assaulting and sleeping with a string of underage boys. Listen to that, a string of underage boys. That sounds like a lot to me. Like they couldn't even put a number behind it. The allegations come from an article in The Atlantic which quotes four men who says haven't spoken publicly before. Two reportedly claimed they had sex with him when he knew they were under 18, the California age of consent. Singer denied the allegations and said it was a homophobic smear timed to exploit Bohemian Rhapsody's success. In a statement to BBC News, he added that the story rehashes claims from bogus lawsuits filed by a disreputable cast of individuals willing to lie for money or attention. His attorneys also told The Atlantic he categorically denied having sex with or a preference for underage men. The Atlantic story includes the new allegations as well as claims from men who had previously filed lawsuits against Singer, which have been settled or voluntarily dismissed. Of the new allegations, one man who was anonymous in the Atlantic story said he and Singer had sex when he was 15, and another said Singer knew he was 17. A third said he started a sexual relationship with the filmmaker at the age of 17 or 18 and described him as a predator who would stick his hands down your pants without your consent. The Atlantic quoted another man, Victor Valdivinos, as claiming Singer repeatedly molested on the set of the 1998 film Apt Pupil. Singer's attorney told The Atlantic the director did not know who Mr. Valdivinos was and denied that anything had happened between them. He also pointed out that Singer has never been arrested or charged with any crime. That says a lot. That speaks volumes too. And that goes back to the whole thing. White men in Hollywood, or white men in general for a lot of times, but especially in Hollywood, can be merely accused of sexual crimes, sexual assault, molestation, rape, whatever. And that's usually sometimes as far as it'll go. Sometimes they won't even get a charge. But a black celebrity can get hit with an assault allegation and they'll be quick to charge him. Look at what happened with Chris Brown. They were quick to arrest him and the chick lied. He had to pay a $2,000 bail and he was let go. So he lost money behind a lie, but he's suing her, or he plans to sue her, so that's good. The Atlantic story was written by Alex French and Maximilian Potter, who are credited as Esquire magazine's writer-at-large and editor-at-large respectively. Singer posted a statement in October saying he was aware Esquire was planning a negative article about him. In Wednesday's statement, the X-Men and The Usual Suspects director said, and ironically, The Usual Suspects, isn't that the same movie that Kevin Spacey was working on? I think he was, and look at what he's dealing with now. After careful fact-checking and in consideration of the lack of credible sources, Esquire chose not to publish his piece of vendetta journalism. That didn't stop this writer from selling it to The Atlantic. It's sad that The Atlantic was stoop this low standard of journalistic integrity. Again, I am forced to reiterate that this story rehashes claims from bogus lawsuits filed by a disreputable cast of individuals willing to lie for money or attention. And it's no surprise that with Bohemian Rhapsody being an award-winning hit, this homophobic smear piece was or has been conveniently timed to take advantage of its success. So this goes back to my point. This is the same smear campaign that Nate Parker went through, but see, Nate Parker, his was way worse. Because his film got ran through the mud. By such people as Cancer Phillips, who we haven't heard from in quite some time ever since that incident on the plane. But you know what? I'm glad that kept her fat ass quiet. So this could very well be a smear campaign, but at the end of the day, Bryan Singer is still reaping the benefits. Unfortunately, poor Nate Parker could not get any kind of recognition for his film. They even labeled it a flop. The movie may not have made the money that it was supposed to. It may not have won the awards that it was deserving of to win, but that doesn't discredit the fact that he raised this money with a few outside help to make this movie possible and make it work. And it was a damn good film, and I did see it on the first day. And those of you who are familiar with my channel, you know that I saw it on the first day and reviewed it. The review was on my original channel. It says BBC News has contacted Esquire for comment. Singer was fired from directing the Queen biopic for unreliable behavior on set. Unreliable behavior on set. Just weeks before filming was due to wrap. but it's still listed as the film's directed by the Directors Guild of America. You can't tell me white privilege don't play a huge part in this, because if this was a black director who had what did they call it, unreliable behavior on set, they would have found a way to remove their name as the director. His name is still attached to the project even though he was fired. So technically whatever awards this movie gets, he's still attached. And see, the thing is, Bryan Singer has been caught up in all these scandals over the years. His name is still going to ring. Nate Parker, his name is going to get lost in the sauce, with the exception of the people that do still appreciate his work, despite the smear campaign he went through 3 years ago. Do I think Bryan Singer is a creep? Hell yeah. I mean, all this stuff that's coming out about him, and it's not like a lot of stuff that's coming out about him now is fresh. They were talking about stuff about him before he even attached himself to this project. I've heard stories even going back to when he was working on the first X-Men film. And that was back in 2000, 19 years ago. 99 if you want to count the time that they were shooting the movie, which is probably late 1999, early 2000. But y'all let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. Do you think that this is a legit smear campaign, or do you think, like I do, that Bryan Singer is guilty of what he's being accused of?